Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Jahaziel Israel, and I'm a recent graduate of the Knowledge House. When I think of Black women, path blazing, and innovation, I immediately think of my mother, who immigrated to the United States with my father from a British controlled Antigua and Barbuda in 1980. With only a high school education and hanging on to the grossly misinterpreted American dream, my mother bore four children and managed to provide a life and access to opportunities that would be non existent back on the island. Now, my mom's definition of opportunity meant that we didn't have to trek 5 miles across the island, climb a small mountain, and traverse through a river to get to school every day on foot, though I came to learn my own Americanized definition of what access to opportunity meant: getting an allowance, having a BMW at age 16, and a six-figure job at your dad's law firm after college. Now, though my mother was and still is a humble teacher's aide working with special needs children, she instilled in me from a young age the value of hard work, hustling, creativity, and entrepreneurship. I won't give you an allowance like your white friends, but I will invest in your business idea, my mom would say. So by the time I was in middle school, my brother and I had a thriving candy business using the recycled boxes that the school candy sale fundraiser gave us. She'd actually let us do market research to find out which candies the kids liked. She would buy them at Costco and then we would sell them. We also sold gold and jewelry with popular cartoon pendants. Don't ask. I lived in Westchester. Kids didn't have less than $50 on them. And we also had a thriving snow shoveling and salting business in the winters. Now, from an outsider judging my mother, they would just see a Black immigrant woman laboring as an underpaid teacher's assistant. But to me, my mother was and still is a trailblazer, an innovator, a mastermind at taking my ideas, watering and cultivating them, and pushing me to achieve beyond what I can even dream for myself. Early on, I inquisitively asked my mother, how many things can I be when I grow up? And her reply was, you can be as many things as you can dream or even think of. Fast forward 30 something years later, and those words still resound with me. Life for me leading up to the pandemic was filled with underemployment, apathetic feeling of being stuck in a job that didn't provide upward mobility, and just an overall feeling of exhaustion of trying to navigate the many microaggressions and toxic work culture of corporate America as a dark-skinned Black man. Yet, it was a young Afro-Latina, Geraldine, whose nonprofit provided me an opportunity to learn new skills as a developer, pivot into a brand new career in my mid-30s, and make me feel a part of a tribe, a community of other men and women who look just like me. It was another Black woman, Sapphire, who encouraged and supported me as my case manager through my journey at the Knowledge House, and was a tremendous resource in finishing the program. And it was another Latina fellow, Diana, who would secretly DM me resources and tools during our Zoom classes, and would stay after and explain and teach me very complex engineering topics so I wouldn't feel embarrassed because I didn't understand the instructive. You see, women, specifically Black and Brown women, have been instrumental and invaluable assets in my life, and it is because of Black women that I can thrive in a world designed to hold me back. So thank you, Black women, for all that you do. And you will always be the innovators of the past and of the future.
Thank you for those motivating words, Jahasiel. We are so excited that you joined us to share your story today. Hi, everyone. My name is Geraldine Rodriguez, and I'm the co-founder and CEO at the Knowledge House. And I want to thank you all for joining us for our third event in our fellowship campaign event series. You are here supporting our incoming class of new fellows and the Knowledge House's growth. And last Thursday, we had a special treat where we heard from Black male leaders in philanthropy about how corporations are supporting and protecting Black lives. And today, I think we have an even more special treat because we get to celebrate and hear from amazing Black women doing the work and being leaders in the space of DEI, investing, philanthropy, corporate America, and we get to hear their stories today. So without further ado, I would love to introduce you all to our speakers. And as I read their bios, I'd love for them to unmute themselves so that we can get started. So first, kicking us off, we have our moderator, Asahi Pompey. She is Global Head of Corporate Engagement and the President of the Goldman Sachs Foundation. She is a member of the Management Committee and the Global Diversity Committee. Prior to her current role, she was the Co-Chief Compliance Officer at Goldman and Global Head of Investment Banking and had the responsibility to conduct risk. She joined Goldman Sachs in 2006 and was named the Managing Director in 2010 and partner in 2018 before moving into her current role. Thank you so much for joining us and thank you for supporting the Knowledge House.
Geraldine, it is always great to be in conversation with you. You know, whenever you call, I answer. So it's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful to be here with you and our terrific panelists.
Thank you so much. And next, we have Gabrielle Wyatt. She is the founder of the Highland Project, an organization focused on building and sustaining a pipeline of Black women leading communities, institutions, and systems, resulting in the creation of multi-generational wealth in their communities. Gabrielle most recently was a partner at the City Fund, supported local education leaders across the nation to expand opportunities for students in public schools through strategic advising, board service, and philanthropic investments. During her tenure, Gabrielle launched the City Leadership Fellowship, an executive leadership development program focused on empowering Black and Latinx leaders pursuing bold education visions. Welcome, Gabrielle. Thank you so much. And next, we have Rachel Williams. She is a Bay Area native with more than 20 years of experience in Silicon Valley. She currently is the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at The Motley Fool. Rachel is passionate about developing unique programming to help build a culture of openness and belonging that embraces diversity as a dimension of a company's overall talent strategy. As a senior advisor, she works closely with Northwest and its broad portfolio of companies to educate and guide them on diversity and inclusion strategies and best practices. Thank you, Rachel. And last but not least, we have Melanie Akule, and she is building Black wealth through MINWO Inc. She leverages her extensive experience in both business and technology, and she's combined these passions to create MINWO. It's a DE&I tech company that is centralizing Black business development by providing an ecosystem of products and services that builds, grow, and scale Black businesses. She has spent the majority of her career transforming data from underutilized assets to actionable insights for her customers. She spent over 5 years working for GE, most recently as a technical product manager in their data science products division. And she now, alongside running MINWO, works as a business strategy consultant for startups. So thank you all so much. I'm going to pass it off to Asahi to get us started with the panel.
Great. Geraldine, thank you so much. I've got to start by commenting on Jahaziel's presentation. I got the last bit of it and I just thought it was absolutely fantastic. I wrote it in the chat. Everyone used the chat, but Jahaziel, how amazing. What you described was your mom was a trailblazer, an innovator, and a mastermind. And I have to say that the panel we have today are made up of, trailblazers, innovators, and masterminds. And they're friends, and I know them personally, and I'm excited for this conversation today. I love conversations where I learn, and I know I'm going to learn a lot over the course of our discussion. So it's exciting to be with you here. I'm a total Geraldine fangirl, as I said before, and I'm just excited about the Knowledge House and what Geraldine is leading. At Goldman Sachs, we're on a mission to support Black communities through supporting incredible organizations like the Knowledge House and investing in communities around the country. In 2020, as many of you may know, we launched the single largest commitment ever in the history of this country, specifically focused on Black women, $20 billion commitment. Yes, that's billion with a B, over the next 10 years to impact the lives of at least 1 million Black women. It's called 1 Million Black Women. Super excited about that. And, you know, the response and the support and the dedication of so many individuals as we launch this initiative has just been tremendous. So really, really excited about it. Let's dive right in. I'm going to, direct my question, the first question to everyone, and maybe we can start with Melanie. But my first question is, can you share with our audience your leadership story? I always think it's great to hear about people's leadership story of how you got to where you are right now. Melanie, perhaps you can kick us off.
Yeah, for sure. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here with you all. It's funny, I just was sharing the story with my team earlier today. And in my bio, it mentioned that I started my career at GE. That's where I say that I grew up as a leader. They have an amazing leadership program. I went through their IT leadership program, 2 years, 4 6-month rotations, really just put you through the ringer of trying out different technologies and trying out different leaders. And so being under 4 different leaders gave me the do's and the don'ts of what type of leader I wanted to be. So I saw the great managers that invested in me. I saw the not so great managers that were threatened by me. And so it just really just helped me decide, what kind of leader I wanted to be. So when it came time for me to eventually leave, because MINWO was on my heart, Black Lives Matter Part 1, as I call it, was really kicking up. I just knew that my talents and my gifts could be better used to serve my community. So I took literally every single thing that I learned while I was at GE for those 5.5 years and bring it to the company that I run today. So really big on culture, really big on investing in my team members, because when you invest in your team, they reinvest in you. So that's my story.
Melanie, I love what you have to say about investing in your team, because it's so much, people think about the leader, but you're also saying in order to do and lead, it's really about investing in others as well. Gabrielle, good to see you again. Maybe we can go next to you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Gabrielle Wyatt. And my leadership journey started when I was 17. I grew up in Baltimore going to incredible magnet schools outside of my community because of the lack of quality school options in my neighborhood. And at age 17, I became very frustrated as I thought about the schools that my mom and dad were teaching at. And I said to myself, it shouldn't be true that I have this golden ticket to go to an incredible school that sees my brilliance as a Black woman. And I had an incredible educator who invested in me and encouraged me to step out of my comfort zone and frankly, step into my power as a Black woman. And so I ran for school board at age 17 in Baltimore. I won a seat. And frankly, I never looked back. I am incredibly passionate about figuring out how to really challenge resource flows, policy dynamics, and power in order to empower and co-power with Black communities to ensure that their brilliance is recognized. That ultimately led me to have a career in education systems change here in New York City and Newark, New Jersey. But ultimately, I've landed in this unique seat in philanthropy. I spent the past number of years advising philanthropists on ways to invest truly in Black communities. And frankly, I became radicalized, if you will, as I listened to more and more leaders across the country and their journeys with capital. And I kept hearing the same thing, which is, we're trusted leaders, but the capital's not trusting. And so that led me to found the Highland Project 18 months ago to focus on how do we ensure that if we're saying that Black women matter and that they're essential for how our nation is prospering, then we have to align the resources to do just that. And that's what we do at the Highland Project.
Amazing. I love, first of all, when you're running for school board at 17, great things are going to come right there. And I love this notion of sort of challenging, the way things are. Rachel does the same thing as well. And maybe Rachel, we could go to you.
Yeah, so much about both of your stories resonated with me. So thank you for sharing. So amazing to be on this panel. Challenging the status quo is probably the theme that I'm going to lean into that Gabrielle touched upon. And I think, that saying about women in history, what is it? Quiet women don't make history. There's a lot of different versions of that one, but I'll say it that way. Mm-hmm. I was heading up recruiting at Yelp when they were a pre-IPO company. And for those of you who don't know, I'm born and raised in Silicon Valley. So pre-IPO is a term that we throw around quite frequently, but I want to make sure everybody knows this is before a company goes public. And it's traded. Their stock is traded on the New York Stock Exchange, things like that. So I was helping to build this organization and heading up the hiring. And I was kind of fed up because after 2 years, I had my third boss, and this third boss happened to be someone who I didn't think was qualified to lead HR because he, in fact, had no HR experience or background. And as someone who heads up recruiting, that's my job, to kind of place someone with the skills and talents to match them with the open role that matches their skills and talents. And so I'm seeing that this human being is being placed as my leader with not having the skills and talents. And so I decided to voice my opinion about that to the C-level executives at the company. And I did so. And I told them, I'm gonna try it your way. I don't believe this is gonna work out. I'm gonna give it a quarter. Actually, I gave them more like 7 weeks. And I started to see that the HR team was falling apart because of this person's leadership. And so I ended up leaving Yelp. And this is a cautionary tale as well, because I left Yelp prior to the IPO. Now, when you leave a company prior to the IPO, you do not get to participate in the capital building stock opportunity that is before you. So I missed out on millions of dollars. I can now tell the story without actually crying and, getting my stomach all upset, because the money is coming. I'm not worried about that. But years ago, I missed out on that opportunity. Fast forward 3 years after they have their IPO, I get a phone call from the COO with whom I was very honest with my feedback. And he asked me to come back and head up diversity, equity, and inclusion for Yelp, which was a global role, and a role that I hadn't even considered. But considering my very poignant feedback to him, he thought it might be a good fit. And so now I'm dedicated to this work and disrupting equity, diversity, and inclusion in tech.
Okay, talk about courage, talk about conviction, talk about, putting it into action, what you're feeling. I mean, that is just really, really an incredible story. I'd not heard that one before. So thank you for sharing that with us. I'm hearing so many great themes about challenge, about team and bringing others along, about having the power of your conviction, about raising your voice and challenging. I love the chat because someone in the chat wrote, well-behaved women don't make history.
That's it.
Chat's got you. Chat's got you. Jenny in the chat's got you. So absolutely. Next question, and this is for everyone as well, and maybe Gabrielle, we'll start with you. What is the one thing you wish you had a mentor advise you about before you transitioned into your current position?
I wish I was advised that well-rested women also make history. And that is my new t-shirt, I think, that we'll start spreading. I think a lot about a woman. I think she's an Afrofuturist, Adrienne Marie Brown. And she says, what we practice at the small scale ends up becoming movement wide. And that's how I think about rest and sustainability. And I think that for women and people of color and Black women, and if you sit at any of these intersections, it is rarely practiced for us. It is rarely rewarded for us. It's rarely acknowledged that we need to rest if we're serious about creating multi-generational change in our communities. And I think something that unites this panel today, I think something that unites the folks in the chat is that we're passionate about opening up opportunities, not just for our families, but for our communities and the generations coming behind us. And so with that, it also means that if we're passionate about the future, we've got to pace ourselves. And pacing ourselves means we need to figure out our definition for well-being, not the like bubble baths and going to the gym. Like those are portions of it, but that's not it. We have to define what well-being means for us. And we have to be unapologetic to practice it, to carve out that space, because without it, I don't believe we'll continue to make history. I don't believe that we'll strategically be able to pass down our innovations to the generations coming up behind us. So I wake up every day thinking about that world where we have women who aren't well behaved, but they're also well rested, and they're really creating incredible change.
I just love that. Well-rested women make history. I love that. Let's remember that. I think I would put it on a t-shirt. I'd wear that t-shirt. People don't talk about pacing. There you go. You got some sales right here. People don't talk about pacing yourself, right? The whole notion of like superwoman and the Black woman as beast of burden, and she's carrying it all. And so I love what you're describing. Melanie, maybe we can go to you, that one piece of advice.
Yeah, for sure. Just to tag on, definitely love that. We actually just had a company blackout last week, shut the company down, told everyone to go rest. It had been a rough Q3. So totally, completely honor that. I think my piece of advice was actually kind of told to me, but I just did not hear it until later. But it was, you do not have to be hands-on technical to be technical. It took me a very long time to understand what exactly that meant. When I going through that IT leadership program, I thought that I needed to be a coder. I thought that I needed to be in the databases. I thought that I needed to be debugging code. But that just that didn't excite me. The systems aspect of technology and building out software, putting together teams, thinking about how data interplays with the software, that is what excited me. So there were so many careers that I didn't know about, such as being a Scrum Master, or being an analyst, or being a product manager, and some of them make actually a little bit more money. And so I wish that I would have been more exposed to that earlier in my career. I wish I would have really understood that just because I'm not the one coding doesn't mean that I'm less than or not as valuable as the engineers. Because I think I would have saved myself a lot of heartache and frustration trying to work on code that I just it was not my thing. So I think that's definitely, especially it was a female leader that I had that really helped me understand that I was technical. She threw me into technical projects. She didn't expect me to be the one coding it, but she expected me to be the one to deliver the solution at the end of the day. And I really appreciated her for seeing in me what I couldn't see in myself quite yet.
Wow. Melanie, I just think you just opened up technology for a whole lot of people who were like, that door is closed. I'm not that hyper technical person who loves to code and thinks about it morning, noon, and night. And that's what a technologist is. You just opened that door. I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the vulnerability around, maybe I heard it, but I didn't believe it until later. Rachel, your story too, I love the vulnerability as a theme as well, because it just shows our inner humanity. Rachel.
I saw this question. I couldn't think of of advice that I wish I had gotten, because I actually got the exact right advice that I needed. When I joined Google X in 2019, so I'm no longer there, I'm moving on. I haven't even started at the Motley Fool, so that's why I was kind of going like this when Geraldine was giving, I'm kind of in betweensy. I'm kind of like don't have a job right now, which feels nice. But before I joined Google X, my mentor at the time was also at Alphabet and Google, in a very high position in DEI, the highest that you can get. Being very vague, you can look up the names and all that story afterwards. And I remember emailing her my first day, and she said, "What are you doing here?" And I was like not the response I expected. I'm thinking she's gonna say, "Yay, glad you're here. Like, let's do this. No, she was like, "What are you doing here?" She said, "They are not here for your brand of activism. But now that you're here, You stay 2 years, you get out. And I was like, okay, this is my first day. I'm joining my mentor. She didn't know all the details, but I'm thinking this was going to be an exciting thing. Fast forward 6 months, I saw exactly what she was talking about. Because I'm about that systems change. I'm not about the performative DEI work. I'm about asking the deep questions of who does your performance management system serve truly? How is the engagement survey data being sliced by demographics, not just gender, but all of them? And if I need to get approval from the legal team of the highest levels, I would get approval to gather that data, because without data, I can't have an informed strategy for DEI and how to disrupt the systems. So I'm that person, which she knew. So I took 2 things away from that. One, that I have a brand. Like, I didn't even realize that I was considered an activist until she said something. And I was like, oh, guess so, guess she's right. And then 2, that I am committed to this work, and I listened to the thing she said. I stayed 6 months past the 2-year mark that she suggested, but that was the exact right advice. And it's really nice when you have a mentor whose advice is like spot on, because sometimes you're talking to people and you're getting advice and it's overwhelming. You don't know what to take. You start to say to yourself, like, I'm not like them, or I wish I was as brave as her. But when you have a mentor who sees you, gets you, and gives you that spot on advice, like, that was a special moment for me. So
that's getting really real. And it took a lot of courage for her in that moment to tell you, like it is, because heaven knows, she didn't know where that could go. So I like that whole notion of women helping other women, which kind of leads us into the next question, which is, how does your work support other Black women to blaze their own trail? Gabrielle?
Sure. So at the Highland Project, we're focused on building and sustaining a pipeline of Black women leaders of communities, institutions, and systems who are building multi-generational wealth and change in their communities. And we seek to support women in a couple of ways that I think are really unique to the sector or to the ecosystem. The first is that we are everything. So we are interdisciplinary for a few reasons. One, we believe that wealth is not just about dollars in pocket. We have the polling data now to back us up on this, that wealth is more than money. It's about our ability to breathe fresh air. It's about our ability to have access to incredible healthcare, great foods, and incredible education without crippling debt, and more. And so therefore, to solve the racial wealth gap crisis that continues to exist in this country, we believe we must have a table full of Black women across sectors who are pulling different levers to achieving closing the racial wealth gap that exists today. The second piece of the intro that I think is important for folks to know is that we're intergenerational, and maybe call that part of my own origin story of running for school board at age 17. But I think that what we're trying to do at the Highland Project is to really flip traditional notions of leadership on its head, to say that you do not have to be a CEO, a startup founder, or in the C-suite to be embarking on incredible change in your communities. So age is really just that to us. It's a number. We're creating a coalition of Black women leaders from Gen Z and above in our network. We pair our network, which is a cohort of 15 leaders every year, one with community, a community that's unapologetically focused on practicing well-being and unapologetically focused on how to realize collective power, given the different seats that women are sitting in within any given cohort. We then pair it with trust and capital. I would think about us as the MacArthur Genius Award for Black women. Every woman we work with receives a $100,000 unrestricted grant in her vision, not her organization, her vision, because we know that when trusted leaders are given trusted capital, we see incredible innovation occur. And so at the Highland Project, my greatest dream as an ancestor is to look at us continuing to exist, continuing to raise capital to power the visions of Black women, and frankly, to look and see a nation where people realize that when Black women win, everyone wins. All boats actually begin to rise in terms of how we all think about wealth, how we accumulate wealth, and how we pass it down.
When Black women win, All women win. I would even go broader and saying all people win. So I love that. Melanie, maybe we can go to you.
Yeah, I guess it's also kind of twofold. So with my company specifically, our mission is to create generational wealth through scaling Black-owned businesses. And let me tell you, Black women have been critical and instrumental in me building and scaling my business in the early days. I've worked with Black women consultants for marketing, web development, all of that. And they are still with me today. It's been 5-6 years and they're still with me on the journey. And then vice versa, right? I'm now their biggest advocate and their biggest referrer. Just last week, I made a referral to another startup friend. I was like, this is the woman that did our company website. You should definitely work with her. And so just being mindful of making sure that all the consultants that I work with are Black and women, female. So then on the hiring side, making sure that we're at parity when it comes to hiring. So my leadership team, 75% Black women. We have 3 front-end developers that are Black women. Our back-end developers are male. But just making sure that I am mindful about, when we're bringing in resumes, do we have enough female resumes to look through? And if that's not the case, I'll go back to my sourcer and I'll say, hey, we need more female resumes so we can make sure that we're equal in how we assess this. So it's interesting to see, they'll be like, well, why do you need women-specific resumes? Well, in your first batch, there were none. So let's try this again. So just constantly advocating and making sure that we do those things. And then also with the women within my company, making sure that I'm pushing them to be more vocal, to be more assertive, to speak their mind and bring the value that I know that they have. Sometimes there's imposter syndrome, there's, uncertainty, there's a multitude of things that I remember feeling in my early career, and just making sure that I'm paying that forward with the same mentorship that I received to really draw out my leadership skills in them as well.
Love it. Rachel, we're going to close out with you on this question, then we're going to shift to Q&A. I know we've had an active chat, so I'm going to get some questions in from the audience. So how is your work blazing a trail for other Black women?
Well, one, I like to, kind of throw things and shift them around and throw them on their heads. And the work is not directly with Black women. What I have realized in doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work in Silicon Valley is that white, straight gendered, cisgendered white men are still in power. And so my work and my calling is to work with them to get them to see the benefit of investing in Black people, Black women, Hispanic people. That is my role. Because what I have seen in doing this work is that I can bring to the table as a head of talent multitudes of diverse talent, and they still will not be selected, or they will be selected and still not get the promotions. And so I'm trying to break the barriers at kind of the top of the power structure, which is working with the people who own most of these processes and still own a huge part of the capital to change their hearts and mind. And this is not going to be something fast and overnight, but it is deep one-to-one work with leadership in Silicon Valley that I think will have that impact effect on the lives of women, Black women, Hispanic women, and the rest. So I'm working from the other side because I know beautiful people like Gabrielle and Melanie are working from the community side. I'm working outside of the community to make sure.
I have to say in the chat is sort of exploding around that comment. A lot of people saying that is much needed work. And I totally agree. Us talking to each other is not going to change it from a system perspective. We got to be attacking it from multiple sides. And so it's great to have this group collective sort of doing that. All right, we've got a bunch of great questions coming in from the Q&A. The first one is on imposter syndrome. Do you experience imposter syndrome? And if so, how do you manage it? By the way, I saw this amazing quote, and literally, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that said, imposter syndrome is really being blinded by the brilliance of your own light. And you can't believe it's so fabulous. So it was kind of an interesting, it's probably said better than that, and someone's going to find it and tell me exactly what it is, but it was something to that effect. Gabrielle, maybe we go to you for this one.
Sure. Yeah, I feel it in so many ways. I felt it when I was 17 and I was the youngest in the room. I was the only Black woman in the room. I felt it when I entered philanthropy and I was sitting at tables of rich, wealthy white folks, right? Talking about our communities. And honestly, I think what I've learned over time, I think about this poem called Won't You Celebrate With Me by Lucille Clifton. And she talks about what it means to be a non-white and woman growing up with no examples of how to be, but to live a kind life. And I really internalize that because to me it says, you have inner power. Be still and listen to that voice inside. Be still and own that you deserve to be here. And that's not to say that I am perfect, that I don't have days when I'm constantly doubting myself or constantly questioning the spaces I'm invited into. But I have to go back to that still small voice, the fact that the ancestors who came before me, they had no models. And I also may not always have a model in the room, but I can be that model for the woman coming behind me.
Won't you celebrate with me? You know, I'm going to be reading that tonight. I'm sure many other people will as well. I really like this next question because I'm kind of curious and I want everybody to answer this one. I'm kind of curious on the answers. So, question is, I'm wondering how these amazing women identify introvert or extrovert. And if anyone's an introvert, any advice on navigating networking? Melanie, maybe we'll go around and everyone says introvert or extrovert. And if anyone says introvert, we'll double click on that one. Melanie?
I'm definitely an introvert that happens to pretend to be an extrovert.
All right. Rachel?
I'm an introvert, but I play an extrovert.
Gabrielle?
I'm an extrovert who increasingly would like to think about herself as an introvert.
I love this. All right, Melanie and Rachel, because I think this is an important question on how you deal with networking and all of that.
Yeah, I think the technical term is ambivert, right? But yeah, as an introvert, I really had to learn that I don't have to network the way that they say that you should network, right? The idea of going to an event and feeling like I have to meet and talk to everybody is literally anxiety inducing. I have to prepare myself for highly social situations. So what I started with was just making one goal for the event that I was going to. So whether there was a speaker that I wanted to speak with after their event, or if there was a person that I knew that was going to be there that I wanted to try and connect with, I just told myself, if I met that one person or if I met one new person, then that was it. That was good. I won for the day. And then eventually that became easier to do. Eventually, when you go to these events, you meet more people, you know people when you get there. So it's less, anxiety inducing. But then also I always just honor, how I'm feeling. So my one friend, she'll look at me and she's like, oh, you've peopled enough today, haven't you? And I'm like, yep. I will silently dismiss myself. I'll say, thank you. It's been great, but it's time for me to go. And I think when I was younger, I was a little bit more nervous about that because I felt like I had to be everywhere and I had to be seen. And now I'm very okay with not being seen. You'll see me tomorrow.
I love that people as a verb. I love it. I may carry that forward. I'm also an introvert who masquerades an extrovert in real life. Rachel, the same question for you. And by the way, Melanie, I love the specific advice because I always love discussions where we leave our audience with specific things that they can take forward. And I love that idea of one goal, right? So I think that's really practical, super helpful. Rachel, the introvert extrovert question, but also pivot into another question that came from the audience, which is, could you provide suggestions for Black women interested in breaking into DEI work in a formal capacity, but don't have sort of an HR background?
Wow. Okay. Let's see. Let's answer the introvert thing. The introvert thing was helped along by my mother, who made me pursue dance and recitals. And I played piano for 20 years, and recitals come along with that, and acting and all of that. So she really prepared me for the world of work, which is a stage of sorts at times, for sure. And I would say I love Melanie's advice on the events. I just really keep it to genuine connection with someone. So I don't force myself. I don't try really hard. If I happen to be getting some food at the table and someone comes up and starts a conversation, that is my entry point for engagement. And when I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go. So back to this self-care, part of my self-care is setting boundaries and setting time limits. Most of my friends know I will give your event an hour and then I gotta go. I will turn into a pumpkin for sure. So like 1 hour, let's make it impactful. And you can do it in an hour. You don't have to stay start to finish at an event to make it impactful. And then to the DEI question, I would say there's a couple of ways you can get involved. One, if you see opportunity at your organization where there may be inequities, lack of diversity, or exclusion, I would say make that obvious or make that known to leadership if you feel safe to do so. It sounds like this person looking to get in DEI may feel safe to do so. So that's one. But as my former boss used to say, don't bring the rain without bringing an umbrella. So don't just point out all of the things that are wrong with the organization. You actually have to have 2 or 3 solutions to go along with that. And that's actually what happened with my situation with Yelp and why they asked me to come back. It wasn't that I just complained about the situation. I was kind of like, so here's how you should fix it. I would organize the people or function in this way. I would do this, I would do that. And so the COO of the company, remembered that feedback and he was like, you should come back and head this up. So I was always be thinking about solutions to the problems that you are noticing in an organization. There's also, Cornell has a great certificate program if you're interested, or if your company wants to help you invest in that. I think I can get you a really good foundation on all of the things related to this work.
I love that. Very fulsome, very, very fulsome response. I love that. Don't bring the rain unless you're willing to bring an umbrella. Next question. In the age of, and I'll let anybody who wants to take this, in the age of posturing and publicity, many companies virtue signal through diversity quotas. How do you ensure the avoidance of the commodification and tokenization of the diversity of your employees so that we focus on the individuals and their specific needs?
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Well, what I would say, given the moment that we're having, the great resignation, as many of you may have heard, where people after the 1.5+ plus, going on 2 years that we've had, have had a moment to reflect on the type of organization they want to be a part of and where maybe their unique contribution to the world may be. People are moving and leaving companies or starting their own. And what I will say is that in this moment now, the employee, the worker, has all the power. And so what I've been seeing for a lot of companies is that they're being challenged or at least asked about their DEI efforts in interviews. And so companies are scrambling to get some PR marketing, some verbiage, some messaging to the recruiters and to the interview teams so that they can answer all of these people of all walks of life. It doesn't have to be just someone who is underrepresented and underserved. Asking, so I saw that your company made a pledge back in 2020. What's happened since then? And that is a legitimate question to ask any organization. Because any employee should be able to answer it, because it should be obvious, as it is with Goldman Sachs, what they're doing when it comes to disrupting inequities in society. So I would say, believe in the power that you have, especially in this moment now as a worker, because you are highly sought after and you can choose where you work, where you bring your talents, how much you're paid for those talents, and all of that.
And Geraldine is writing in the chat, she couldn't agree with you more. She writes to everyone, remember the job candidate is also interviewing the company for a good fit as well. Anyone else, Gabrielle or Melanie, want to weigh in on that question?
I'll just add it really quickly, kind of like from the reverse perspective, not being in corporate America, but being a Black female founder where all these investment firms are all of a sudden looking for Black founders to invest in. It's really interesting. And I feel much more empowered now asking those tough questions like Rachel mentioned, right? When I'm meeting with an investor, it used to feel like, oh, I'd be so lucky if they invest. But now, like, the first thing I do is I look at your team page. Do you have any representation on your team page? If no, I'm not taking the meeting. Yes, I need the money, but I'm not dealing with that. And so, you know, just being able to feel more empowered in those conversations, knowing that they claim this is the work that they want to do. So just holding their feet to the fire, really.
Absolutely. I know I'm being asked to end on time, and so I'm going to close. And I understand that there's a video as well. I have to tell you, this has been such a fantastic discussion, practical in terms of tips for the audience, vulnerability, and just its realness and its authenticity has just been fantastic, in storytelling and anecdotes. So I want to say thank you to every single one of you. And I think where we started at the very beginning with trailblazers, innovators, and masterminds, I'm just excited for the work that you're leading. And frankly, I'm excited for what you'll be able to accomplish. And hopefully we'll get a chance at Goldman Sachs to work with you. But I want to say thank you. And I'm going to turn things back over to Geraldine and the team.
Wow. I am literally like blown away by all of the gems that you all dropped today. And I really feel so privileged and honored to have you all in my network as mentors, peers, and partners in this work. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences and lessons learned with our community, our students, our graduates, our staff. They were the ones that asked you a bunch of questions. And so we are all learning together in this moment. I wanted to just summarize some key takeaways that I heard in terms of defining leadership. What I heard from these amazing Black women, being a leader means being an activist, advocating for yourself and advocating for others, empowering other women, right? Connecting your peers to resources and opportunities, but also a commitment to self-growth. A lot of you share stories about mentorship, and y'all noted Black women being your mentors to give you advice, and that is so powerful. We also heard we are not superwomen, right? And we need to self-preserve, we need self-care, we need time to rest. And I think that is something that I'm hearing more and more for the first time, unfortunately. And I hope that as a movement, that's where we head, right? Like, you literally can win with rest. And if one Black woman wins, all Black women win, etc. So this was such a powerful discussion. And I thank all of my panelists. Asahi, thanks for moderating. Thanks so much for being here. I wanted to close and just remind everyone that this is the last event for our fellowship campaign. This is our annual fundraiser that we kicked off in September. And because of the generous support of our attendees and supporters, we have raised 88% of our fundraising goal. To remind you all, we had a very ambitious goal to raise $1.2 million to support 200 participants in the next 12 months. And y'all have helped us almost get to 90%. It means that we just have 150K to go, and then we will be exceeding our goal. So I hope my team drops the donate link in the chat. And we have Giving Tuesday coming up, so it is not too late to support us. It is not too late to connect us to your corporations, to your employers for a partnership. And I want to thank all of you for attending. I appreciate the time, and I appreciate you all supporting our growth. So thank you so much, and you will hear from us soon.